Hey, so it's been a lot going on lately. Um, that's hard to put into words, partly because I don't know. It's like moments are so new. Like I get here anywhere, anytime, and it's like, what am I supposed to do? What am I here for? What's going on? And it's that very grasping that's kind of the problem. So it's like, okay, what I'm supposed to do is not figure out what I'm here to do. So there's no figuring out. There's no, okay, um, so you kind of sink into what's here, but then more, oh, why is that painful? Where is that located within, what that pain say? The pain in your chest, energy pain, not physiological. Um, and so you want to explore that, but how do you explore that? You go, I try to become it, like they say, but who am I to become anything? Who's directing anything to be anything? It's very confusing, especially since my short-term memory just seems to drop. Like don't. I mean, sometimes when I'm really in deep presence, I wonder if I'm really in deep presence, and that wondering takes me out of it. And it's like, no, you're never gonna know. You're never gonna grasp. You're never gonna understand. Like that's not. It's the wide openness, and then the wide openness, which is nowhere and which is meaningless. And then the question comes like, okay, I'm just a receiving device that doesn't record anything. And it's just this flux. And that's it. And the act of accepting that, of saying that's enough. It's enough that you can see things and feel things and hear things. And think too, for fun. It's not who you are, but it can be fun and interesting. It can be like kind of a bonus. But most people don't treat it like a bonus. Most people treat it like that's all there is, and the rest of it is just something to be managed, something to be disengaged from to the fullest extent possible. So reversing that, treating thoughts as some kind of adjunct, some kind of bonus, some kind of blah blah blah. And it's funny lately, I can see the thoughts bubble up of an intention to say or do something. And I kind of know, like, I don't know where that thought came from. I don't know where that intention came from. I mean, even just to get to go to the bathroom or whatever, right? Or fix your hair or something. I don't know. I can feel the thing, the intention. And I don't know where the intention came from. And it's kind of up to me to follow through or not. But generally lately I follow through because I guess it feels like the easiest thing to do, like a stone dropping to the bottom of a pool, but is that just getting into conditioning? it always comes down to I need to meditate more. I need to, um, because it's very ad hoc these days, just when I'm washing dishes or while I'm taking a shower or while I'm lying in bed or, take a gummy or whatever and have fun with that. That's like this whole like going into another. It just feels like the walls are thinner and things are more confusing and thoughts are weirder, so they're kind of easier to be like, okay, clearly that's just a thought. I mean, weirder from whose perspective, right? I guess from the fiction that's trying to hang on. But it's so funny how others still have all the stories. Even if you let go of them, others still have the stories, expectations of you. And that's fine. That's nothing personal. And you don't have to take that super seriously, even though, if you have obligations, commitments, you can't just drop off the face of the planet. And I don't want to, but it's just strange kind of living. Well, I just watched a video. I was going to say living in two worlds. I just watched a video where somebody was talking about how the Venn diagram of like spiritual life and, normal life or whatever, they sometimes they overlap and other times they seem to contradict each other. And Angela said, reality is this Venn diagram is some little speck of rice compared to what we're actually talking about here, right? There's no the Venn diagram is a circle and it's not even a circle because there's no end to it. What shape can you call that? So, and this video is recording my rambling. That's interesting too. That's like, I mean, I can play this back and see if there's any thread to follow because right now I don't know if there is or there isn't. Anyway, so I just had the impulse to get back to whatever the original point of this video was supposed to be. So let's try to do that. So, um, yeah, I took some notes that I'm going to use to try to orient myself a little bit. So wisdom always sounds cheesy. Like or it can sound cheesy. Like you can make it into a placard and put it in your dentist office, right? Um, and everyone's like, oh yeah, live, laugh, love. That's great. Or you're right where you need to be. Or if you're looking for a sign, this is it. I mean, all those are nice pointers, but most people sort of never get the point. Most people read it, even believe it, and then go live according to their conditioning, right? That's the general human trend. Um, I mean, for me too, probably most of the time, even still to some degree. I don't know. Right now, I don't know anything except shapes and colors, and apparently, words are coming out of my mouth. So, yeah, but sometimes something hits differently to the point where you actually can start to sort of swallow and digest the wisdom as opposed to just like, oh, there's the wisdom. Like, oh, it's the wisdom's like, okay, there's the wisdom. It's like, no, you actually swallow it, digest it, embody it. Um, and you never know where that's going to come. And so, before I tell you where my latest inspiration is coming from, I just want to mention that I'm not a cultural snob anymore. Uh, working with ayahuasca, I could see that there's wisdom absolutely everywhere. really everywhere. Disney movies, like, the pointers are everywhere. Um, and being snobby just means closing your eyes to some of it, rather arbitrarily, kind of based on, I guess, what your resident snobs consider cheesy or, you know, beneath notice, beneath contempt. Um, some of the most earnest expressions of art, uh, or sorry, some of the most earnest expressions of humans are not high art. Um, and often high art can be just a big workaround, masturbatory kind of, dancing around the issues and trying to look smart, and that's it. Not really trying to inspire anybody, just trying to solidify your own identity as I do high art. Um, and it seems in this universe that earnestness really is the coin of the realm. Um, in IFS therapy, presence and compassion are the coins of the realm, and I think they all, earnestness. What is earnestness? It means presence. It means humility. It means not playing the games of trying to puff your own self up or puff up your own identity. Um, so in that sense, compassion, love, full acceptance, whatever you want to call it, uh, seems to be where it's at, and it's also where we're most scared to go, and it's also where we most want to go. So, um, but yeah, I've been reading the Narnia books lately, which are really wonderful. They really hold up so beautifully, and they really have lessons and allegories that are timeless. And I think as a kid, I missed most of it. You're just like, well, reading the adventure story, whatever. Want to know what's going to happen next. But as an adult, you can see the way that Aslan, who's supposed to be Jesus or incarnation of God, basically, how he can leave them kind of to their own devices for centuries at a time, and gradually they lose faith, and then eventually some people somehow make a stand, and that begins to call magic forces to their aid. And keeping that faith in the face of, I mean, it's the hardest thing to keep faith. It's just so easy to be cynical, especially when you haven't heard from Jesus in centuries. Or pick your deity or uh, demigod, whatever analogy you want to use, right? Um, and also the Rings of Power. Been watching that, and I told I wrote on Facebook, watching the Rings of Power is like watching current world politics. It's just like everyone's fucking up, everyone's being stupid, everyone's being fooled by this sort of evil force of identities just rubbing against each other and fighting each other and thus solidifying each other. And in any way you try to fight, any way you try to struggle, seems to ensnare everybody even worse. And it feels very hopeless. And maybe maybe there wasn't any one person or even group of people or elves or whatever who could have made any difference. Um, Maybe the darkness just had to sweep over. And there's just no avoiding it, and it's just it's part of what's what. And I'm constantly struggling between, like, should I try to bend the arc of history? Should I find a side and join it? And of course, it's not mutually exclusive. I can do that too, and I have. There's things I've done. There's things I'm doing. Um, Trying to at least live by first, do no harm. Trying, but even simply asserting one's humanity can be felt as an attack. So it's really a tough time to be human. Of course, that could be said during World War II, World War One, any of the genocides, any of the plagues. You look around and, yeah, you do what you can, but generally speaking, if you turn the tide of history, it happens. You can't make it happen. You can't will it to happen. What you can do is do what you feel called to do and be used by the universe as well as you can be used by the universe, and that's it. You don't have any say in how that turns out. You don't have any say in what effect it has in the short term, or the medium term, or the long term, or the term of infinity. You don't. You're a speck on the end of a grain of rice, you know? And it's not your power that's gonna force the hand of anything. You can't When you try to remake this world in your image, that's when things tend to seem to go very wrong. Of course, wrong, right, wrong, tends to cause suffering, put it that way, or intensify suffering maybe. But maybe maybe suffering is kind of a luxury in the cosmos. Maybe people pay good money to play the human game, the suffering game. I'm obviously kind of, I don't mean money, you know what I mean? Maybe it's an extreme sport. And finding something like courage, or something like faith, or something like earnestness in the face of these powers that seem so strong when you're here. It seems the only noble thing to do is fight against the people causing all this suffering, but then you end up causing suffering yourself, like, um, the elves who committed atrocities to get the Silmarillions back because of their because of the evil they had done. The Silmarillions now burned their hands, and they couldn't stand them. Anyway, yeah, so something about, I was reading in The Last Battle, the last Narnia book. Of course, they all die and go to Aslan's country, which is supposedly heaven. And heaven is like Narnia, but bigger and less, and there's no blemishes, and everything's perfect, and there's forests and waterfalls, um, and it reminds you of kind of Aman, the Undying Lands in the Middle Earth mythology. Um, but then I thought, when humans die, I don't know, maybe there is a perfect forest and mountain simulation that we get to hang out in if we want to. I don't know, but you know, paradise might not be anything like that at all. Dying might be the end of forests. Of course, if I am the ocean, there's no end of anything. But the particularity of this human and this tree, that it's possible to encompass that but not experience it. Or maybe I'm totally wrong and there's a different way of experiencing things that I don't know about. Yeah, it's my mind is still trying to figure out, trying to figure that, trying to map this out, trying to map reality. But I guess my point is, I guess every forest disappears every instant, and you, as whatever I seem to be right now, have the option to enjoy it or not, to see it or not. Of course, walking in the woods with kids, you have to pay most attention to the kids. We went to the zoo yesterday, and yeah, it's interesting how it feels like difficult to enjoy myself when I'm in charge of the lives of two little humans. I mean, I enjoy their enjoyment too, but of course, at any moment they're going to start whining because they're tired, because they're thirsty, because of this, because of that. Maybe I can fulfill their request, maybe I can't. But it's like it's not relaxing for me. I'd really like to get to a place where it is relaxing, maybe where I don't feel like so much like I have to manage everyone's safety and feelings. I guess that'll come naturally with time. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I should appreciate that too. I should be able to be more present with that too. But for me, presence gets so, I'm not sure what the word is, forgetful. When I'm really present, it's just whatever I'm focusing on or whatever I'm seeing, whatever I'm hearing. Um, it feels very free, and it feels very like nothing else exists. And when I'm with kids who have their own complexes of needs and um, wants and age appropriate immaturity, and yeah, it's really hard for me to be present because I'm trying to triangulate because they have a story of who I am and what they expect from me. Anyway, yeah, so there's a beautiful line at the end of Prince Caspian where the trees um, join a feast and they're eating earth, different kinds of earth, loam that's like chocolate and silvery sand. And it said they quench their thirst with deep draughts of mingled dew and rain, flavored with forest flowers and the airy taste of the thinnest clouds. And it's such a beautiful, it brings tears to my eyes. It's such a beautiful idea. And the fact that our water has passed through clouds and flowers and it might not be flavored with it because, we have our new plants and whatever, but they have been through the thinnest clouds. Can that flavor pass into here and now when I'm drinking water? Or is that just a concept? Is that just an idea? Anyway, it's a beautiful one. I really liked it. And, just looking at my eyes in the mirror, they're so fascinating, so intricate. And, beautiful in their own way. Like, all eyes. But it's kind of a paradox because at the same time as I'm trying to appreciate the particularity, I'm also have to be willing to give it up, or not willing, but understand that it's not mine. And I wrote, as long as I'm afraid of losing or dying as a separate entity, I'm not free. And, it's kind of hard to think about it. It kind of feels like shaming to think about it, but someone remarked that things like genocide or famine or earthquakes or car accidents, any, tornado destroying your house, any horrible thing that could happen, it haunts us. But I'll just bring it to me. It haunts me because I believe in the characters of. Is that funny?
Can you open this?
Sure.
Are you making a video?
I am.
You have 0 likes and 0 YouTubers.
Well, I haven't even posted the video yet, sweetheart. There you go. You get the rest.
Oh.
Can you close the door on your way out, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
So 0 likes on that video, but not on every one of your videos?
Not exactly, but close. Yeah, they keep us humble, don't they? Yes. So I apparently believe in my character and in her little character and Ollie's little character and everybody's character, to the extent that that I have fear about their vulnerability, about my vulnerability. I feel like me dying will be loss and tragedy, like it feels to me when others suffer and die. And it's one thing to say that my suffering and death means nothing, essentially. It feels a lot more heartless to, of course I never tell other people they aren't real or their suffering and dying means nothing. But even thinking it feels Feels heartless, feels gross. Um, so is it meaningless? Yeah, I think I said before, we kind of make our own meaning. And when it's real in a moment, it's real in that moment. And yeah, I wrote, there's no way to win this life. It's not going to end well. You're not going to, there's not a scenario where you seize the reins and make it all better in your own image. That's the story of Melkor in the Lord of the Rings. He says earnestness, working faithfully to implement God's will, is a kind of slavery. And he's like, I'm going to get control back for however long I can get it. But that kind of force is never satisfied. And because it's within the work of God, or whatever word you want to use, it's always eventually going to be subsumed back into the totality. Nothing's going to supplant God. Nothing's going to out infinite the infinite. But somebody wrote that, or like rather, I wrote like, it feels like a kind of tyranny where God says, implement my will or suffer. Be a willing and happy tool of my creation, or be miserable. I think one of the things Iluvatar said in that sense was, do you really think anything's happening that isn't essentially part of my plan or part of my, like, even the discord? Melkor wasn't a bad guy. Melkor was just part of the fires of making things interesting, I suppose. Because after all, there's no heroism without treachery, nothing to test yourself against if not evil, nothing at stake if you don't at least partially believe in and care about this world, and maybe have some doubt that it's that there's a God or a plan, some doubt, that some fear, I guess, that this is the ultimate reality, and you better stake your claim in it because it's all you got. You better fight for your own personal survival because that's your universe. You better fight for your people because, don't be a fool. Don't get fooled again. Don't let them bully you. Bully them first. Another thing I saw mentioned was that God explores who or what she is, in part based on who or what she's not. Like she's somehow learning, or through us, she's finding finer and finer grains of I don't know, what feels good, what feels real. And of course, even if it is a simulation, it's still unique and precious, given the abject infinitude of possibilities every unique expression is. A bunch of birds flying through the yard right now. Every unique experience is kind of infinitely precious and infinitely nothing at the same time. No pressure, right? But maybe what we end up with is the best of all possible worlds, where we have nothing to lose in reality, and yet fascinating and beautiful and poignant and heroic things to witness and do. I'm afraid I'm trying to make a map again. And maybe that's kind of avoidance of primary experience. It's just so scary to go into the one pointed thing, because you really feel like your mind feels like it can range all over the universe. Try to sort of grasp all of existence in concepts. And at one point, going deeply into one moment feels like parochial. Limited. Helpless. Entrapping, small. And then your mind says, stay with me, we'll figure out everything. And something quiet and unknowable whispers, and you don't know what it's whispering, and you don't know, quote unquote, where it's taking you or what its intentions are. It's less familiar, even though it also feels seductive, like but seductive in a way that there's two ways. One of the ways is seductive in that your mind is still trying to co-opt it and saying like, "Oh yeah, let's do this transcendent thing. And we'll get this thing called enlightenment." But there's something simpler, there's something below that, fundamental to that, and you hear about it, but it can't be described. So eventually you just have to try to find your way of being of exploring something that is very untethered from anything you think you know. And just that little flash, that little bright coin of earnestness, and you don't really know if it's the right thing. You don't really know anything. And yeah, you think you're going to get eternal peace and bliss. Secretly, you kind of think that's what you're going to get. And maybe that is, I mean, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe that is actually our true nature. But we're incarnated for now. So how do you do that? Best way. You hear lots of things from lots of people and people that you trust and experiences you've had, and you're just groping in the dark. But with more equanimity as time goes on, with more gratitude. I mean, it can be as simple and cheesy as that, but it makes a big difference to your lived experience and hopefully to the way that you interact with and relate to people, and eventually try to, well, not eventually and not try, but, you know, hope it has some kind of salutary effect on creation as a whole, and not take it too hard if it doesn't look like much. As I said in another video, it doesn't have to look like anything. It's just this constellation of sights and sounds and smells and thoughts and feelings. It's just what it is. And it's unique. And we're unique. And we're important and we're nothing. And there's meaning and there's no meaning. And it's all somehow the same thing, apparently. I think I'll meditate a bit, but I'm glad for people who've written earnest books. That's for sure. I'm glad for one of the dangers of earnestness is it can be easy to mistake earnestness for, or somebody who's earnest without maturity can end up being sentimental, even codependent. Powerful earnestness is something else. And it's not power over anyone else. It's power over yourself, essentially. Because you can be earnest and let other people's feelings be whatever they want to be without it affecting your feelings or your sense of security or your willingness to be earnest. I mentioned once a comment to one of Angela's videos, it seems like a certain amount of privilege or power or luck is involved as far as to be able to be earnest, to be able to be vulnerable in that way without just getting your teeth kicked in. I mean, little kids with bad parents don't get to be earnest without getting punished for it. And they don't have the resources to understand that they shouldn't be punished for it. Palestinians can be earnest all fucking day long and they still get genocided. So it's not something I should take for granted. Not something anyone should take for granted. This possibility, because I mean, yeah, if I piss off the wrong people with my earnestness, I could get jailed or assassinated or whatever. But generally speaking, I'm in a safe place, a safe identity. By which I mean nobody's like hunting or seriously threatening white suburban women, right? White suburban American women. We're pretty safe, and some of that safety is allegedly certainly some of our resources come from the backs of people that my government has oppressed and threatened and hunted and murdered, so they could extract resources and power from all over the world so that we can have, supposedly, so that we can have security in this way of life. But we see what this way of life is doing to most people, and we see how we're eating our own now. The rich are just gobbling up everything and leaving ordinary people much worse off than they were 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And a CEO just got gunned down, and it's freaking our ruling classes out because, like, they can do that. They can just fight back. And listen, I don't condone any murder. That's not the point. The point is, how long are elites going to commit mass murder before somebody takes things into their own hands? Of course, maybe that just strengthens them, and which will destabilize things even more. Maybe there's going to be a really nasty revolution. Maybe there's going to be a New Deal kind of thing where somebody realizes that this is stupid and it's hurting everyone. And monomania has its limits. The whole Ayn Rand, like, oh, I'm going to be a techno warrior king, philosopher, dictator, whatever, and everyone's going to be better off for it. And you're like, yeah, okay, well, let's try it. Let's fucking see. Don't think it's going to go really great. But at the end, it's not up to me. I can't wave any kind of magic wand and change the fate of the universe. What I can do is what I feel called to do with as much fidelity as I can. That includes practice, which I think will help me a lot. And that's something I'm working with at IFS, because that's hard for me, I think, based on some, childhood wounds. But yeah, to really taste the rain in my water, or I don't know, like, do we need poetry? I guess we don't need it, but it's fun. It's nice. But as long as poetry is an adjunct and you recognize that poetry is not the thing is, I don't know. I guess for me, it's my own little corner of my own little sensorium. And what will be, will be. And what is. And it's not a punishment. God's not trying to punish anyone. And at the same time, there's a fear of being like Dr. Pangloss, seeing everything go wrong and say, well, it's the best of all possible worlds. It's like, Voltaire was trying to inoculate us against that. And fair enough, because there can be a whole other stratum where you are blithely pretending injustice doesn't exist. And that's not necessarily very skillful either. So Gotta find some kind of middle path. Nothing to guide you but whispers, impulses, teachers who claim to have been there. But it's so subjective that even if you think you've had exactly the same experience they're describing, you might be wrong. So, I don't know. Existing within that mystery. Assuming, I suppose, that it's not a shithole and you're not being punished and all the things you fear the most are just noises in your head. Just a force that tries to understand and shape reality. Which gives rise to all kinds of interesting shit. And then you realize, oh, that's not where it's at. Not necessarily going to help. Not in the way we really need. So you keep exploring and do the best you can. Call it good enough, because what else are you going to do? You can't just apologize. For existing forever. Eventually you have to square your chest and say, I exist. Well, there is existence, there is an experience. And it's not some cheap facsimile. It's not hell. It doesn't have to be. If it's squalid, then maybe the universe wants to explore squalidness. Not label it. Explore it. Contrast it with what it feels like to be in the undying lands. What it feels like to care for someone, even knowing that they're such a fleeting manifestation. Ultimately, I guess, to care for I was going to say to care for yourself being God caring for itself. I don't know if that has any meaning outside of this domain. But it is quite a drama in this domain. And I don't mean that in a denigrating way. But somehow living amid total mystery with nothing certain. like even pretending to be certain anymore. I guess that's the task.